to Wine Library TV. I am your host, Gary Vaynerchuk, and this, my friends, is the Thunder Show, aka the internet's most passionate wine program. And I'm going to tell you right now, get all your recorders out, put this on your Apple TV and go HD, because we have somebody, you know, I like to talk about we're changing the wine world. This gentleman right here, I don't know if we know gentleman, but, you know,
let's not get
you don't
carried
get called that too often.
No.
This man right here to the right of me fundamentally has changed the wine world. He's, you know, arguably one of the biggest pioneers in the entire wine industry. When I think of people that just pop to my mind when I get into discussions about wine that have changed the landscape or have been major influences, you know, right off the bat in America, I go Mondavi. But you know what? This character right here with the beautiful ponytail comes to mind within the top 5 every single time. And I'm very honored to have him here. When I started this show, I would be lying if I didn't say that there was definitely a thought through my mind that this guy's going to be on the show one day, because I knew I was going to rock it out. And I'm excited that you're here. Randall, Grahm, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
It means a lot to me that
Thanks.
you're here. I think that most of the Vaniacs will know your story, but for those who don't, give me a quick little, you know, 120, 180 second sum up of who you are, what you've done, kind of things you're about, and then we'll get into the Vinos.
Well, let's see. I was born in a log cabin in Beverly Hills, California. You know, I'm a wine geek. Started out basically as a Pinot Noir person because I'm a guy. And if you're a guy, you want to do something really difficult and impossible because you're a guy. It turned out, unfortunately, that Pinot was maybe a little too difficult. I kind of underestimated.
It baffled you.
I underestimated or misunderestimated, as our president might say. I didn't understand how difficult it really was.
Didn't take long, did it?
Yeah.
So what got you into the wine industry?
Basically, I thought it would be a good way to meet women.
Right.
It hasn't worked out that way. But,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But at least you've had fun along the way.
I have. I actually began my life in the wine business in the retail end of things, and was so enchanted by
and
wine.
where was this?
This was in Los Angeles at the Wine Merchant. And selling wine was great, and drinking wine was really great, but somehow I thought that being involved in a more fundamental way and learning how to make it would be even a deeper experience. And
sure.
It's actually worked out. Really.
And blueprint-wise, where did you go from there? You went from a retailer to go where?
I went back to school. I went to Davis. I tortured my professors. And after that, my family helped me out. We started a small winery in the Santa Cruz Mountains in the eponymous Bonny Doon. And sort of one thing led to another, and as I said, we started with Pinot, and then Pinot didn't work, and luckily I made the acquaintance of the Albanian wine merchant, Kermit Lynch. This is Albany, California, of course.
Of course.
And Kermit was and is a great partisan of Rhone wines.
No question.
And so basically what I've done is a result of intermittent positive reinforcement. In other words, it's worked more often than it's not, and that's why I've kept doing it. So my basic thesis is that it's warm and dry in southern France, and it's warm and dry in the central coast of California. Ergo, the varieties of southern France probably are better suited to our climate than almost anything else.
Sure.
And this has in fact been it's a simplistic hypothesis, but the correct one, as it turns out.
So what was the first vintage you got involved? What was the first Bonny Doon vintage?
The first Bonny Doon vintage was 1981, and it was Pinot Noir, and it was pretty dreadful.
Right.
And then I started bringing Pinot Noir from Oregon in '83, and accidentally made some really good wine. In fact, probably got the highest spectator scores in my first vintage out. Never been able to replicate it since.
One hit wonder?
One hit wonder.
So, you know, from there, as many people know, you started creating this cult personality. I think, you know, anybody knows anything about me also knows that I'm very into marketing. I speak a lot around the country now about personal brand. You were one of the pioneers of that. You created your own personal brand that had a lot of equity. I mean, when I first got into wine, you know, in the early 90s, I mean, it was a name I knew pretty quickly. Definitely by the mid-90s, it seemed like there was a lot of steam around your brand going into the late 90s. And, you know, the Bonny Doon name had brand equity, and then from a business standpoint, correct me if I'm wrong, you did have a transaction, the Bonny Doon name, right?
Correct.
Fill me in on that.
First of all, Gary, he who lives by marketing dies by marketing.
No question.
I think. So, I mean, I think in retrospect, I was kind of an intuitive marketer. I've never trained in marketing, but I just sort of this intuitive.
It's in your DNA.
It is in my DNA, which I think is essentially a function of like wanting to make sure my child survives at all costs. Like whatever it takes to do it, that's what I did.
It's raw.
Yes.
I
But
understand that.
I think I overdid it. Honestly, I think I overdid it. And
In what sense?
I think the marketing got ahead of the product itself.
Right.
And
which is a very scary balance.
right. And over time, I mean, I'm truly profoundly a wine guy, and I truly profoundly love European wines, especially wines that express a sense of place. And what was happening was there became a greater disparity between that which I said and that which I did.
Sure. You started getting into California brands, right? Where there was purchased fruit, I assume?
Well, we were purchasing fruit, but in other words, I was essentially all about terroir and expressing how lovely it was and how special it was.
The brand got away from you at some level a little bit.
Right, a lot.
A
I mean,
lot.
I didn't really, and there was nothing in what I was doing that was expressing this deep philosophical
I understand.
commitment and value that I had. So that's why it was necessary to make a big change in the company. And the question was, what kind of change is it? Do I sell the whole company? And that was sort of presupposed the idea that there was somebody who actually wanted to buy the whole company. And I sort of envisioned this kind of, O. Henry-like situation where they call me up 2 days later and say, like, could you please take it back? Just like, please. So immediately. So it wasn't clear whether we sell the company or part of the company. So ultimately what we did is we sold some of the larger brands, Big House and Cardinal Zinn. Pacific Rim was spun off as a separate company
altogether,
which I own, but really am not very involved in the day-to-day at all. And then Bonny Doon has shrunk. We limited our product line, we stopped our imports, and we really are trying to focus now on estate wines, biodynamic wines, and really wines that make a difference.
That's fantastic. Now, how many wines are within this portfolio as of now?
Right now there are 10 and possibly shrinking, and that's down from like 30.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into it because we can yap all day, and I will get sidetracked because I'm so fascinated by the whole process. Let's get into the first wine. Now, as most of my fan base knows, I'm high on, drinking white wines at room temperature. I feel when you get them chilled, you get into that high school beer syndrome. It starts hiding a lot of the flavor profile. So for me, I've always been, and I think just over time, I've gravitated to drinking, even at home. I drink wine at room temperature, so it's not just for the analyzing standpoint like some wine people. But when we were setting up, you said, this really would taste better chilled. Why don't you, debating is fun. I love that part. Why don't you, tell the maniacs why I'm a clown and completely wrong about drinking this wine at room temperature?
Sure, I think you're completely wrong about drinking this wine at room temperature, and let me tell you why, Gary.
Please.
Like wine, like everything else in life, is all about balance.
No doubt.
And
we live in the gray zone, is what I say.
Yeah.
I want to live in the gray zone.
Well, the thing is this: what you want to do, what I think of as quality in wine is balance, equilibrium, where every part is integrated with every other part. And certain wines that have strong elements, whether it's acid and alcohol, those kind of want to be muted. So you don't really want to drink a high alcohol white wine at room temperature.
Because you're going to taste it.
You're going to taste the alcohol. That's all that's going to come out. And I think a high acid wine like the Albarino, I think also the acidity is going to be more pronounced. I think I am in basic agreement with you that we drink our wines too cold. White wine's too cold, and red wine's too warm for that matter. But I think a little chill or a moderate chill really kind of helps to equilibrate
So
things.
in your world, if everybody's sitting there saying, yeah, I knew I liked Randall better than Gary, what would you tell them? How many minutes, temperature, where do you like to go with it?
Oh, let me see. Probably a warm fridge temperature, I would say.
So
like 45 something.
Got it. Well,
Fahrenheit.
Yes. Let's give it a sniffy sniff. Aromatically, to me, where do you stand on aromatics? To me, I feel that way too many people miss the best part of the wine a lot of times when they're skipping the aromatics. I always make the reference to movies. If I miss the previews, I'm out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm crushed. I don't even want to watch the movie.
Yeah.
My wife and I have legitimately not gone to a movie when we ran so late and we knew, we rolled in, no previews, and I'm like, I'm out. I'm just out.
I think that's extreme, Gary. I really
It is extreme. That's how I roll. That's the same way I feel about aromatics. I feel that too many people just pop and pour and drink and are missing such... I feel like they're missing the first scene.
Yeah. Agreed.
Are you big on aromatics?
Big time. I live for aromatics.
Now tell us about the Albarino we have in front of here, the Calda Solo. Did we do the zoom in? No, I'm getting all excited here. All right, 2007 Albarino. It's a $20 US wine price point, suggested retail, which means you probably can find it cheaper in some places and more expensive in others. Tell me about why you're doing this. Are you excited? A lot of the fan base here knows that I'm very excited about this varietal globally. Where you Monterey, I see. So what's your thought process here?
Yeah, well, this is from our own vineyard in Soledad. It's a biodynamically certified vineyard, and that means a number of things. But the wine is also
animal skulls.
Animal skulls, yes, big time animal skulls, moons, and dancing naked. But what it really means
and you did it for that last part.
Yeah. But what it really means is that the wine is made in a very hands-off, natural way, non-interventionist way. So we use indigenous yeast. There's no enzymes. There's no acidification. Just really minimal handling. And so you could almost think of it as acoustic, if you will.
I like that. That was unplugged. You know,
Unplugged,
just like
yes.
MTV Unplugged, a little Pearl Jam action. Now, why Albarino? What got you excited about going in this direction?
Well, frankly, the vineyard is in the Salinas Valley. I don't know if you've ever been to the Salinas Valley. It's kind of a
I actually was at your facility where you do a lot. Well, it used to be that whole Monterey area.
Yeah,
so I've seen a lot of the vineyards there.
It's funky.
It's funky.
It's funky. You know, it's foggy in the morning.
Yep.
There's like 3 picoseconds of photosynthesis, and then the wind kicks in, and then the wind stops, and then the sun goes down.
Sure.
So it's not the most brilliant place to grow grapes.
Right. So you're like, what could survive here? What's tough enough?
Yes, I've always thought, like, what is this about? Why grow grapes in the Salinas Valley? And, you know, we don't get enough rainfall. We're obliged to irrigate. And the irrigation water that we use is slightly saline. There's a reason why they call it Salinas.
Yep.
The water is saline. And
go figure.
Go figure.
Behind the name.
So we were growing some Riesling in our vineyard, and the Riesling was great. The Riesling was very, very nice because it's a cool climate.
Sure.
And so the Riesling was great. And I thought, you know, if Riesling does well here, maybe Albarino would do well. And the reason I thought that was that I'd been to Galicia. I'd done some consulting there, in fact, and I was very impressed by the smell of salt in the air. When you go to Galicia, it's salty. So the wind blows the salt breezes in, and in fact they can't use metal in their vineyards because it all rusts out. Even wood rots out, so they use granite pillars as their end posts.
It's an amazing place.
It's fantastic.
And the food is
Killer.
sick.
Killer. Mariscos.
I think I love salt so much. Maybe that's why the food tastes so well.
Yeah,
you know, like I feel like I'm probably getting a little salt in everything I eat from the wind.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So anyways, I thought maybe there's some weird occult connection that Albarino likes salt. Put it baldly. And
you like going with these global simplistic thought processes.
Well,
which, by the way, and I'm sorry to jump in, I'm only attracted to it because I believe in the same stuff. A lot of people like to break down things, and I'm just like, let's go very global, let's keep it very simple.
Yeah.
A lot of times, that's where the truth is.
I think there are these funny hidden connections between things, and I think we don't trust our intuition enough.
Agreed.
And I think
it's actually all I've got.
Yeah.
I'm very uneducated. I really can't bring much to the table except my gut is batting a very high percentage.
Good. Yeah.
I just felt like saying that. Anyway, let's get into this wine. Let's give it a sniffy sniff. What are we getting here on the nose? The thing that's really popping out to me, believe it or not, is almost like this tangerine mandarin.
Exactly.
I did good.
Exactly.
I got a little punch. I'm getting quite a bit of that on the nose.
Yeah. Lime and tangerine, I'd say.
Like a lot too.
Yeah.
Like very distinct, and it's very attractive. And if you like those citrus kind of smells, then I think you're going to really enjoy this. I mean, it's popping through for me very obviously. Let's give it a whirl. Too alcoholic and acidic. Let's move on. So coming through on the
Thanks.
You're welcome. Very creamy. I get a nice creaminess on the mid palate, but then it starts and goes into mid palate transition to me, kind of creamy, and then on the back end I start getting more of the acidity. I almost get like I don't want to call it oyster shell, but it's like chipped bluestone, like a stony kind of component.
That's what I call minerality.
Yep.
And that's what one of the things I live for. One of the main things I live for.
Acid and minerality.
Acid and minerality.
Because with food, I mean, that's where the beauty comes in.
Yeah. By the way, he was just joking about the acidity and the alcohol. Note.
Side note. Yeah. So this is not as acidic though as a lot of
Correct.
Albarino that I have.
Correct.
Yeah. So. Which is kind of interesting because if I ever do hear from people where they're thrown off by Albarino, I've pushed it quite a bit in the past in the show, sometimes I feel like the acid is too much for that. So if you are a viewer who tried some of the Albarinos we've done in the past, like it, but maybe that acid hits you a little bit back, again, warmed up at room temperature if I'm not feeling it that much. Again, slightly chilled, like the majority of you are going to drink it, I think you're going to have no issue with that. It comes across extremely clean. This is pretty darn good. Are you happy with this? How many vintages have you done this?
2 commercial vintages.
Okay.
I'm very happy with it. I should also mention this has 20% Lurero. So it's 80% Albarino, 20% Lurero.
So we're getting a little Vino Verde action kind of.
Yeah. But in the Lurero contributes a bit of a herbal element, almost like they say a bay laurel.
Herbaceous.
Yeah. And I think it's a nice
I love that you're fooling around with that. I mean, to me, I had a Lurero the other day. I just actually was in Boston yesterday, and I did, or 2 days ago, and I did a wine seminar for the Harvard Business Wine Cuisine Society. I don't know why they would have me. I'm like the polar opposite of who should have been presenting to them. But we did a Lurero, and there was this one guy who was very classic Bordeaux, 1990 Costa Rica Burgundy drinker, and he lost his mind.
Really?
Could not believe how good this wine was.
Yeah.
And of course...
This was Vino Verde?
This is Vino Verde. But this was real. This was like $30 a bottle.
Yeah.
This was not, the green slanted bottle at $4 that frizzante and sugar all over your face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think it's a varietal that has a lot of potential. And, I can see Lurero really becoming a major factor over the next 4 to 6 years. I see people going 100% with it. And I see people, you're laughing at that.
Yeah, I think maybe 12 to 80 years, I think, is my timeline.
So
I mean, it's a cool grape. It is a very cool grape.
Let's talk about that for a second. New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
No market in the U.S. 15 years ago, right?
Correct.
One issue of the Wine Spectator, Cloudy Bay Sauvignon Blanc on the cover.
Yeah.
An entire category born in 12 months. Australian Premium Shiraz from Barossa McLaren Vale. No market. Right?
Right.
$40, $50 wines in 1998. Dan Phillips was hanging out with me. Not a person wanted to buy his $40 Shiraz. I was excited about him because I never had wines
but
like that
I think
before.
not a person wants to buy them ever again.
Oh, nobody does. It's over, right? Their scene's over. But I'm going 1998. I'm going a little time machine on your ass.
Yeah.
All right? 1998. Dan Phillips is here. I taste these wines. I love them. I buy a lot of them. Parker comes out, starts giving out 98, 99, all these wines. Entire market's born. Now, what you said, and I love it, and I agree with it, you live and die by marketing, right? Those wines didn't have the oomph to last forever. It was like eating ice cream every meal, and you can only do that for so long. But at the end of the day, I feel Lurero, if it gets the press from one of the 2 major people, if people taste these wines, I mean, they are really serious. I can definitely see Mark Squires, who I think writes for Portuguese wines for Parker, or the Spectator going and doing the Portuguese issue. There is no reason some of these top-notch small artisan producers over there can't get the 92, 93, 94 point scores, and then the public starts looking. I mean, that's just the bottom line of our game. So I don't disagree with you where you're going with 12 to 8, but at the end of the day, it can happen tomorrow because the press has a lot of impact.
Yeah. But the other point, Gary, is that subtle wines, I think, I'm not sure how well subtle wines fare in our culture and our society these days, because everything is so exaggerated that unless wines are kind of over the top, it's hard for them to really sort of come to the surface and emerge. And so, the reason why Sauvignon Blanc, New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, I think, has fared so well is that stylistically it is so
in your face. No question. You get the bell peppers, you get the grass, you get the kiwis, you get the pineapple. That being said, we have felt, and definitely since I've started doing the show over almost 3 years now, where I do push a lot of Chinon, and I do push, Cahors, and I push all these different varietals and try to get people to really expand their palates. At the end of the day, we've seen, I mean, just like you said, there is no market for $40 Barossa Shiraz anymore.
Yeah.
We've seen, excluding even the show, just the consumers and just the vibe, a definite pushback to more food-friendly, more subtle wines. I mean, it went so far to the extreme. We're definitely, feeling it, and I think it's very fascinating. I think we're still in a culture where people are very intimidated by wine and are going to gravitate towards press or, other things to dictate their buying purchases. But I do feel that the message of what I like to spew all over the place and other people are starting to realize, try different things, trust your own palate. Who gives a crap what I say? Who gives a crap what Randall Grahm says?
I do.
Exactly. And that's it, and getting into that individual kind of palate play.
Yeah. I mean, again, the problem, I mean, we could talk about wine writers and critics all until we're blue in the face. The problem with wine criticism is that wine criticism has to look for outliers. Things that are subtle, things that are just refined, don't stand out so much. And therefore, if you're a wine critic, it's hard to really kind of take a stand on things that are subtle. It's just a lot easier to take stands on things that are more exaggerated.
I think so, but I think at the end of the day, what will be interesting is as more and more people get involved in the industry, as more characters emerge, as more people get passionate, I really do think authenticity and transparency and passion can draw. I mean, really, let's be honest, that's what you did.
Yeah.
I mean, at some level, it's what I feel that I've done. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're passionate enough in your message, if there's a guy or a gal out there that makes amazing, subtle wines and has the tenacity and belief and hunger and drive to get people to recognize, she or he is going to be able to pull it off.
I think so.
And what's really exciting, though, at the end of the day is, unlike living and dying by marketing, food-friendly, balanced wines, even if they're subtle, can stand the test of time. They don't become fads.
Right.
Let's talk about this. This wine rolls in about $32 US. Cigare Volant, which is, a wine that I've been buying for since I was 17 years old, mainly because of the UFO.
Yeah.
That's why I bought it.
And don't forget the death ray.
Yes. So
beam.
now this, what I always loved about this was it was always fun for me in the beginning days to expand my consumers' palates, and I would say, do you want a California Chateauneuf de Pop? And that's kind of what I always thought of from the outside. Tell me about the project and what you think.
Well, when I first started in the wine business, I made a wine in 1982 called Vin Rouge. It was nice wine, couldn't get arrested with it. After that, I thought, Randall, probably you want to...
Do you speak to yourself like that? Do you say,
Randall?
I don't
really.
I'm just curious. Okay.
But, I thought to myself, Randall, maybe you should think about putting a little pizzazz in the marketing. Maybe kind of do something a little more engaging, kind of
outside the box.
Yeah, I mean, so in other words, I wanted to do a Rhone style wine, and I thought, how am I going to present this to the customers? Should I just call it Grenache? Okay, not such a great idea. So what I wanted to do was make a reference to Chateauneuf du Pape, but not in sort of an imitative way. I didn't want to say this is like a Chateauneuf du Pape wannabe. I wanted to create a certain ironic distance or connection. So I wanted to reference Chateauneuf du Pape, but in a funny, weird kind of way. And then I read about this goofy ordinance in 1954 that prohibited the landing of flying saucers in Chateauneuf du Pape. That's
it.
That's goofy. I can work with this. And
so if they landed, they'd be fined?
They would be taken to the pound. I mean, this is just a totally surreal, weird thing that they
didn't they realize that if they had the ability to land here, that
they could just vaporize the planet and be done with it?
Yeah, there was no pound involved. You must go to the pound.
I'm sorry. Yes.
So, okay, so this is a blend of 38% Grenache, right? 35 Syrah, 12 Mourvedre, 8 Carignan, and 7 Cinsault.
Correct.
Very nice.
Correct. Good palate, by the way. Oh, no, you're reading the back label.
Yes.
I was very impressed with your palate.
Just on the nose.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's give this a sniffy sniff. See what's coming across here. What do you get coming across on this nose?
Cherries. Wet stones.
Wet stones. I like that. I get this bubble yum kind of thing going on. A little bit of a bubble gum action. Do you remember the old commercials in the 80s, the bubble yum guys? They go, this commercial was fascinating to me when I was 7.
Yeah.
They were it was like they were going to draw guns on each other, but they were blowing bubbles, and first one to pop it would win. It's like that bubble yum gum. I get a little bit of that, and probably is strawberry cherry flavored bubble yum.
Yeah.
I like the candied fruit. It's like a candied fruit coming through on the nose.
Yeah. Candied cherries or candied raspberries, maybe.
There's also a little bit like when I really get deep in there, almost like a freshness, like an ocean freshness. Like a
saltiness, or
is there a little saltiness coming through? I mean, I don't know what's making me trigger that.
Well, I think
like right there, like when I really get in, and it actually smells like cotton candy to me. A little bit on the back end. And maybe like a paintball. You know, when you get shot by a paintball?
I've never been.
You've never done skirmish, the paintball thing? We got to get you out there. We're going to have to tuck in your...
full body armor.
You're going to have to tuck in the, the ponytail, because if it gets hit, that'd be like such a weak getting knocked down on a ponytail shot would suck. All right, let's give it a whirl. What I find very fascinating about this wine, what draws me to it immediately, are the rose petals. Mm-hmm. Very, very floral on my palate. And a nice dryness. I mean, this is a pretty dry wine.
Yeah.
Which I like quite a bit as well. What was your favorite vintages of this wine when you think back? Because I've got a couple of 98s laying around. I've got a couple of...
98s, unfortunately, you're screwed. Harry,
dead, right?
Because... stupidly,
can you sign them for me and I could just sell them on eBay instead?
No,
I'm trying to make a profit here. I'm not trying to lose.
Yeah, 98.
Randall, at any
the
cost.
problem with 97 and 98, very stupidly, 98 was great, great, and it would have been.
I loved it right off the bat.
In a large format bottle, killer. But
Right.
I stupidly used synthetic closures.
So I'm in deep.
So you're in deep shit.
Sorry,
So
deep
sorry, you can't age wines with synthetic closures. Does not.
How about screw tops?
Brilliant for aging.
And what is the oldest wine you've had? Now, you're probably going by science or what people have told you. What is the oldest wine you've had at a screw top?
Our own wine is 2000.
And you've tasted them somewhat recently?
Oh, yeah.
And no problems yet. Are they
It's not-
evolved? Are they even changed?
Okay.
Right?
Do we want to talk about screw caps?
Well, I know you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
I've already decided, since we're going slow and really getting into this is going to be a 2-part series, which I've never done before. So congratulations.
Okay.
So go ahead, knock yourself out.
So there's a lot of misconception about screw caps. Many people when they think of screw caps, they think railroad tracks,
Bonny Doon.
down on your luck.
Bonny Doon. Boone's Farm.
Boone's Farm.
Bonny Doon, same thing.
So, end of the line.
Mad Dog 2020.
Mad Dog 2020.
Brown bag.
Yeah, brown. So the point is that screw caps are actually brilliant, and screw caps are particularly good. Well, they're good for white wines, but they're especially interesting for wines destined for aging, for long aging. Wines will actually evolve and continue to develop and live much longer in screw caps than they will with corks.
Why do you feel that? Because
it's true.
And
you have to look at a couple of analogies. Imagine a wine in a 750 and in a Jeroboam.
Sure.
And what happens in a Jeroboam is there's less oxygen permeation through the cork,
right.
And so
they live
longer, they develop more slowly, and they live longer.
Let me ask you a question. This is something I talked about at Harvard at length, which is that I actually feel that box wine closures are brilliant. What do you think about the Tetra Pak box wine opportunities? Because so many poor people deal with the fact that they open a bottle,
right,
and they're in a conundrum, right?
They drink half of it.
Either they got to become an alcoholic,
right,
or they got to, take a loss. It's like a lose-lose situation.
Correct. My partner's Taiwanese and doesn't have the enzyme to metabolize alcohol, so the net of it is that she drinks like this much wine and she's done.
So you became an alcoholic.
So I have to become an alcoholic to, So I agree with you. I think it's brilliant.
But if we can't get over screw tops, we're looking at generations before we get to box
most
wine.
people are over screw caps.
No, that's true. Actually,
they're totally
no question. We've, as a matter of fact, I've been, I tour and speak a lot, book signings. Always ask the question: how many people don't lie? And they feel comfortable with me because I'm pretty radical, and they know I don't give a shit. And they say, how many people here will not drink wine if it's in a screw top? Mm-hmm. And no kidding, the last 7 times I've asked it, it's consistently been one person.
Yeah.
And then we all laugh at that person, kick them out, and continue to have a good time.
Yeah.
So it's tremendous. And it happened pretty quick. It took about a half a decade, I think, for people to really wrap their heads around it.
I mean, there are issues with screw caps. When you bottle wines with screw caps, the wines go through a very backward period where they talk about the so-called reduction that occurs, and like the peril of reduction, and like we've avoided the problems of corked wines, but now we've got reduction, God forbid. But it's kind of like the drugs. Is like, is there a drug problem? Well, if there's enough drugs, there's no problem. Well, is there a reduction problem? If there's enough reduction, there's no problem.
Sure. Very fair.